Hello everyone, and welcome to Adobe's Experience Makers, the virtual book club. A good leader never stops learning, and reading is clearly a big part of that, enriching our lives, helping us develop ourselves and our teams, and leading us to make better informed business decisions. And that's why we started the Experience Makers virtual book club, a place where we could bring together aspiring leaders, visionary thinkers, and passionate writers to discuss, explore, and share ideas that inspire new perspectives, as well as letting us evolve and develop our businesses. Our aim is to create a wonderful experience and offer practical advice that helps you and your business. So on to our agenda. We invited you here today to discuss the power of customer experience. Always such an important topic, but maybe even more so at the moment, as your customers assess the experience provided at a rapid time of change across a multitude of different engagement points, from web to physical to call centre, expecting a seamless journey and a bespoke experience designed for them. We're incredibly grateful to be joined today by Martin Newman, the author of The Power of Customer Experience, and Thomas Meyer from Adobe, who's led teams focused on digital strategy and transformation. I hope you enjoy the session, and I'll now hand over to our incredible host, journalist and TV presenter, Steph McGovern.
Thank you very much, Lee. And let me say welcome once again to Adobe's Experience Makers, a virtual book club. Thank you all for your patience as well as we got all of the tech sorted. And we're very grateful you've joined us for this session, because today we're going to discuss and explore the ideas raised in the book, The Power of Customer Experience, with the author, Martin Newman. And also joining the conversation will be Thomas Meyer, Director of the Digital Strategy Group at Adobe. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Steph McGovern. I'm a journalist and TV presenter. In fact, this is the studio where I host my daily chat show for Channel 4 live from Leeds every weekday. You can also catch me fronting shows like Have I Got News For You and Watchdog. But fundamentally, I'm a business journalist. I've spent over 15 years working in financial news, predominantly for the BBC, interviewing business and political leaders across the world. So I am delighted to be hosting this event for you today. So let me tell you more about our guests. Martin Newman is recognised globally as one of the foremost authorities on e-commerce and multi-channel retailing. Based in the UK, he's the founder and chairman of one of the fastest growing global e-commerce and multi-channel consultancies, Practicology, and is an experienced non-executive director. He was listed in Retail Week's top 50 e-tail power list for 5 years in a row and was recently named in the top 20 of Retail Insider's top 100 retail movers and shakers. Thomas Meyer is a digital marketing and customer experience expert at Adobe. He is leading the digital strategy group. Prior to this, Thomas spent 16 years with McKinsey & Company, leading the firm's global brand strategy and marketing ROI competence center. He's also the author of McKinsey's book on branding. So I'm going to kick things off with my own questions, but I just want to say as well that you are able to send questions in too. So I will make sure that they are answered as we go. So if anything pops into your head, get it written down. On the screen, there's a chat function on the right-hand side. If you just pop them in there, then they will get to me. But let me say welcome to our two guests, to Martin and Thomas. Martin, let me kick things off with you then. So Tell me why you decided to write this book.
Customer centricity has been my thing for as long as I can remember. And my dad used to take me to his retail optical practices in Glasgow. As a 6-year-old boy, I used to stand there and watch him serve customers, test their eyes, sell them frames, sell them sunglasses, always investing in his branches and in order to keep them current. And I used to say to him, why are you spending so much money, doing all this? And he said, well, if I don't do it, my patients, my customers will go somewhere else. So I guess that was my grounding in customer centricity. And interestingly, on my phone the other day popped up a memory from me doing a presentation, a keynote at the London School of Business on customer centricity. So I've been going back to 2014. I've been talking about this stuff for a long time. And I wrote the book because I fundamentally believe that being customer-centric and putting your customer at the heart of all you do as a business is really the only sustainable strategy for success, both in the short, medium, and long term. And I've written a framework, which I believe is literally a guide to businesses to implement in order to go on that journey and therefore secure their success both now and in the future.
Yeah. And can I ask you as well, because you hear, don't you, customer experience being bandied around by business people all the time, a bit like it feels like everyone's been talking about pivoting for the last 12 months and digital transformation. So for you, what does customer experience mean? How do you define it?
Sure. Well, I think there's two elements to it. So customer experience is the bit that the customer sees. You know, it's what happens when you go into a store. It's what happens when you buy something online. It's what happens in the last mile when a courier, you know, delivers a parcel from a retailer that you've bought something from. What happens when things go wrong and you call the contact center. You know, these are all elements of customer experience. But the bits that go on behind the scenes, the you know, all the different things that the business has to do with its technology, with people, resources, with process in order to deliver those experiences, that's where the real complexity comes into play. And it's not that easy. Much of it is not that easy to do, which is why I try to write books to help businesses on that journey in order to be able to deliver better experiences for customers.
Yeah, and I know you talk about in the book that customer centricity starts with the employee. So can you just explain what you mean by that?
Sure. Yeah, well, you know, at the end of the day, employees are the heart and soul of any business. And if you're a consumer and you walk into a store or you have any physical interaction with a business, even when you're engaging with a brand online, you might end up, as I say, talking to the contact center. You know, the employees are the heart and soul of every business. And therefore, I think that's the first thing that any business needs to look at. Are you actually treating your employees the best way that you can? Are you training them? Are you developing them? Are you giving them opportunities to succeed within the business? Are you giving them the right tools? Are you empowering them to deliver the type of experience that customers are looking for? So for me, the employees of the business are the starting point, because if you don't get that bit right, then the customer experience is not going to follow.
Yeah. Thomas, let me bring you in at this point then. And just from Adobe's point of view on this idea of customer centricity being, you know, starting with the employee, is that the philosophy at Adobe as well?
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree more with Martin on this point. And in fact, when we did a study together with Forrester about 2.5 years ago about the benefits of being a customer experience leader, a lot of things came out, some of which I think we're going to be talking about around that customer experience leaders grow faster, they have a better customer lifetime value, etc. But one interesting aspect that really was a differentiating factor was that they also had a greater employee satisfaction. And employees tended to stay longer at customer experience businesses or leaders. And realizing that in nowadays world, it's less about the product and pricing, and it's all about the customer experience that you provide to your customers. Empowering your employees and really looking after your employees who are ultimately at the heart of providing that and orchestrating that customer experience becomes so important. And we at Adobe, I think, have, like so many, over the course of the last 16 months, been trying to pivot, as you said, towards really looking after our employees around mental health, wellness, etc. And just one thing I want to point out also, and maybe also a little bit of a shout out here, is that we've realized that taking some time off, having global days off, which we've had now for the past 8 months, once a month, we have one day where all employees that are not working in customer care centers take a day off, meant a huge amount to employees and actually raised engagement and hopefully also increased our ability to serve our own customers and provide that experience.
Yeah, and that's the thing as well. There are some brilliant examples out there, aren't there, of businesses doing things, Martin, to put their employees first. And you've definitely seen that over the last 12 months or so, that focus more on mental health and all of the difference that can make then to the experience they give to customers.
Absolutely. I mean, just today, actually, I read an article about LVMH, the big luxury goods group, who have set up a £30 million pound fund for employees in times of emergency. So supporting them financially, supporting them with some of their day-to-day challenges. In North America, Home Depot, who are the B&Q, if you like, of the DIY sector in North America, they excuse me, look after their staff in financially in times of emergency, but they also pay for further education. So they encourage their employees to learn more, to want to better themselves, and they reimburse all those tuition costs. And of course, that all comes back to them in spades because their employees feel great about the brand, they love working there, and they churn, far less frequently than they would do in most other retail businesses. So there's a commercial imperative to doing this, not only in terms of the impact that your staff have on customers, but how they feel about working, to Thomas's point, how they feel about working for a brand that is experiential and has a great culture and looks after its people.
Yeah, it's becoming more and more important. Martin, can I ask you as well about where technology sits in all of this? Because you talk about it being an enabler, but not the be-all and end-all. So can you just expand on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Technology is an interesting one. I think there's a phrase that I use that I probably borrowed from someone else, which is that we tend to overestimate the impact of technology in the short term, but underestimate its impact in the long term. So if I give you an example, think about driverless vehicles. We've been hearing about driverless vehicles for the last 5 or 6 years. I've even invested in a driverless vehicle fulfillment logistics company. But, when was the last time you saw a driverless vehicle on the road, right? There are none on the road at the moment in anger. There might be some of these little pods going up and down the pavements. There are no driverless vehicles on the roads, but they're coming. But I think we get very excited about the technology, but sometimes it takes a while for consumers to catch on or for the technology to be of an appropriate sort of experience in order for it to really resonate. However, saying that, technology, if you look at the disruptive brands that are out there, Uber, Just Eat, Airbnb, Amazon, all these brands have something in common. And I think that they've understood how to leverage technology to empower consumers. So it's all about empowerment. It's how can we take away problems from customers? How can we give them a better experience by using the technology rather than starting with the technology? If you'll bear with me 2 seconds, I'll give you a very quick example. When I was of where it can go wrong, when I was at Ted Baker's head of online way back in 2007, I implemented kiosks in the store because my instinct was that this would enable us to capture more demand from customers when we were out of a particular size or style of a product. The problem is it didn't really work because if you just plonk a kiosk in a store, customers won't interact with it. Whereas if the staff then get involved in this process and it becomes a staff-assisted sale, then these can work really well. And today we call them an endless aisle, and it gives retailers the opportunity to open up much more stock that might be available, in the physical premise. So it's understanding what the need is that you're trying to solve, I think, is the starting point.
Yeah, and Thomas, can I ask you as a digital and technology expert then, your thoughts on this idea of technology being the enabler to achieve what Martin's talking about?
Yeah, I think there are 2 sides to it, right? On one hand, I think there's this saying of a fool with a tool is still a fool. And that means technology not being the end of it all. Together with customers, we often talk about that trifecta of technology, but also people and processes in order to implement digital transformation and actually provide that customer experience in a digital world. At the same time, I think the role of technology has never been greater as it has today. And in our recent survey of senior executives, where we talk about digital trends, I think 92% agreed with the statement that the importance of technology and digital transformation has increased over the past 12 months. And it's hard to imagine how it could not have been, right? And the last thought on this is that customer experience management and the desire to do so has been around for many, many years. And it started way back when you were a shopkeeper and you tried to personalize the experience, and you were able to do that by really getting to know your customers and interacting with them in a personalized way. In today's world, where customers have the options of interacting across so many touch points with the brand that need to be collected, that need to be searched for insights, and then need to be acted upon, and you need data and content for it. Doing that without technology at the heart of it has become impossible to do. So I would say that technology is in some ways at the center of all of this. And at the same time, I would want to stress that it's not the end of it all, and that you do need exactly what Martin is also very much saying in his book. You need to have at the heart a customer-centric mindset, and you need to be very clear about the objectives and the type of customer experience and customer journey you want to design.
Yeah. And you mentioned there as well, Thomas, about personalisation. I know, Martin, this is something you cover in chapter 3. So can you tell me, can you expand on what you mean by personalisation? Because again, it does feel like sometimes you can hear, particularly retailers going, oh yeah, we offer a personalised service, and then you don't actually know what that means. So what's your thoughts on that?
Personalisation is an interesting one. We use a lot of terminology. I like to debunk some of I call it the BS bingo, apologies for the language, but there is a lot of that does the rounds in our industry. And personalisation, whilst the intent of it, which I'll try and describe, is very relevant. I don't see too many businesses, to be honest with you, delivering truly personalised experiences today. We've talked about CRM, customer relationship management, for 20 odd years, and there are still some brands that aren't able to send out a gender relevant email to a customer. I sometimes buy stuff online and get a generic email or an email offering me to spruce up my women's work wardrobe. So personalisation for me is about being able to serve me as a customer, no matter where and when I engage with a brand, knowing who I am, allowing me to pick up where I maybe want to leave off initially. So, for example, I might buy something, or I might look at something online, I might do my research on the internet, but I might end up going into a store. It'd be great if the person in that store knew who I was, knew what I'd been looking at. Likewise, if I was going back to a website, having been on it a few days earlier, it'd be great if the content that was shown to me and the products that were shown to me at the beginning of my journey were relevant to maybe what I'd looked at before. And when I buy something, that brand is able to communicate with me in a really meaningful way that sort of demonstrates they understand who I am, what I'm all about, what I like, what I don't like. Even taking it further, who else is in my family? I talk about this, and I've talked about this in both my books. We take out a contract for a car, every 3 or 4 years, excuse me, and yet you don't get communicated to by the car dealer or by the car brand until like a couple of weeks before your contract's up. By that point, it's too late. I've already made my mind up to move on to another brand or maybe another dealership. But also, I've got a wife and 2 kids, and I've got quite a big family. Why is that car dealership not trying to get to know a bit more about who else is in my life, and maybe attempting to sell other cars to some of my other family members? I think there's so much more that could be done, basically, than we do at the moment.
Yeah, and Thomas, I imagine this probably wouldn't be that hard to do with technology either, to be able to offer more personalisation using the data that you get from the customer and everything else you can do with tech these days.
Yes, I think in many ways we do have the technology in order to do that. I think it becomes tricky when, and I think in 2 ways, right? One is increasingly marketeers are wary of the creepiness factor, right? And obviously, for obvious reasons, on the privacy and customers, wanting to, yes, have a personalized experience, but you probably know instances also where you think sometimes that's a bit creepy. I recently had that where my broadband provider was trying to upsell me to a TV bundle and was giving me my latest statistics on which channel I had watched the most, and therefore which additional channel I would probably like to watch as well. And that was an interesting way to kind of, see my habits from somebody from a call center in India, where I thought, how the hell do they know that I've watched a lot of CNN in the past because there was the US election on or something like that?
Yeah.
So that, I think that's something to be taken into account. And again, that's where technology helps to be to meet the requirements of GDPR and other regulatory elements that you need. I think the other one is also to, if you think about it, personalizing an experience, i.e. on a website, right? You go on a website and just simple things like you fill out a form but you've already logged in and you wonder, why do I have to fill in these data points again, knowing that the brand already has them in multiple times, right? And I think that's a very simple but highly relevant personalization for customers to not make them go through that again. The difficulty often lies in the data sitting in different elements, and bringing them together is actually something that is, especially if you think about legacy technology that sits in different silos, bringing that together is something that you can imagine we talk a lot about with our customers, and can sometimes not be an easy feat, i.e. also to overcome elements that you've grown for many, many years. That's where I think also it comes to just being slightly more tricky.
Yeah, it's interesting as well. People's different perceptions of like getting that email, for example, Thomas, you saying there, you say it's creepy. Other people would think, oh, that's really useful to know that information. And I would actually, great, I am going to sign up to that channel. And it's really hard to get that balance right, isn't it? Between actually, upselling, as you say, and being creepy, because it works for someone, it doesn't work for others. And I guess that comes back to, again, knowing your customers and that personalisation.
Totally. I think the more you capture up front from customers, about their preferences. Normally when you're buying something online, the brand should be asking you, what do you want to hear about, and how often do you want to hear about it from us? So they should do a job of actually getting under the skin of what makes you tick in the first instance. And if you don't want to be communicated with, that's fine. You can tell the brand and you can opt out of future communication. Alternatively, you can say, well, yeah, I'd love to hear about discounts. I'd love to hear about promotions. I'd love to hear about what you do for loyal customers, because I really like what you sell, and I can imagine that I'm going to become, a loyal customer of yours over the years. So yeah, I'd love to hear what you're going to do for me, and that's one way of, I think, overcoming some of those challenges.
Yeah, it's about choice, isn't it? We've got some questions coming in, so thank you for people who've sent them in. Again, just to remind you, there's a chat function on the right of the screen, so you can just pop them in there and then they will appear to me. So here's one for you guys. Let me put this to you first of all, Martin. What would you say are the key differences between being customer-focused and truly customer-centric?
Wow. Being customer-focused and being truly customer-centric, they're probably largely the same thing, but customer focus is an intent, customer centricity, I guess, is the implementation. So for me, it's about being people first, empowering your people to be able to do their jobs to the best of their ability to serve customers. It's about empowering customers to shop and engage with your business the way that they want to. It's about having a great culture in the business that's very much about customer centricity, and that obviously comes from the top. So ideally not people, the executive team breathing glorify they are on the sixth floor, but executive team who get out into the stores, who talk to colleagues, who talk to customers. A good friend of mine is a guy called Mike Logue, who's the CEO of Dreams. You might be sleeping on their mattress or under their duvets, and he inherited that business with a private equity company called Sun Capital in 2013. The business was bankrupt. And within a relatively short period of time, he turned it around. It was making £60 million a year, even when the stores were shut. And they've just sold the business for over half a billion pounds. And the first 6 weeks in the business, Mike went into the stores, spoke to his colleagues, spoke to customers, and got under the skin of all the things that were wrong with the business. He then implemented something called Pillow Talk, which is where he takes customer feedback. Whenever you make a purchase, 40% of the customers engage with us. It's a half-hour survey, but they find out what's really at the heart of what's going well and what's not going well, and they're literally able to fix these things on a daily basis. So Thomas was talking a lot about data and turning that into insight, and I think this is a great real-world example of doing that. And I guess that's the difference between having a focus on customers and actually going and doing something about it.
Yeah. Thomas, is there anything you wanted to add to that before I throw the next question at you?
You know what? I think Martin explained that fantastically. Yeah. And I think also we shouldn't get hung up too much on individual terms, right? I would probably agree with Martin that the differences between customer-focused and customer-centric can be interpreted in different ways by different brands and the language. I think the importance is, what Martin said, is to, by by focusing on your customers, not only focusing on, hey, let's make sure how we extract the most money or the most pounds out of you individually and try to understand it, but really to think longer term, think about those leading KPIs, i.e. customer satisfaction, what's really going on. I think that's what Martin alluded to, and I think is writing fantastically in his book about.
Yeah. I've got a question for you from Liv Stevens. So thank you, Liv, for sending this. Let me ask you this one, Martin. How personalised does personalisation need to get?
Well, I guess we've kind of covered that.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I think I'm in the camp of asking customers, up front and being. I think if you're authentic and you come across that way with your communication, and you're genuine and you're transparent in how you deliver service, and you're very open as a brand, and people know what you stand for, and you have a purpose, and you're putting the planet before profit, and you're putting purpose before profit, and you're a diverse business, and you're meeting the needs of a diverse set of customers that we may talk about this later. I think if you do all these things, people warm to you as a brand, and it gives you an opportunity to create a different level, a much deeper level of engagement. We all use the term ROI, return on investment. I like to think of return on involvement. So how can we turn customers into fans? And that's not going to be achievable for every single business, but it's a good aspiration to have. And if you started with the objective of, do you know what, Steph, I'm not going to just treat you as a customer. I want to make you a fan. What would it take to do that? Then you've got a better chance of building true customer lifetime value and working out for what you need to do to personalize that, to make it more relevant, for you to want to keep coming back and engaging with my business. That's how I would look at it.
Well, I already am a fan, Martin, so that's good news. Actually, what I particularly loved in the book was the examples you gave of real life businesses. And one of the ones that stood out to me was Greggs, and this idea of, resurrection. Can you just explain to me that the case study you've used there of Greggs and what they did through agility and customer focus?
Yeah, well, I think Greggs have had, like any business that sells food or any consumer-based products, sometimes you get the range right, sometimes you don't get the range right. And they've made some mistakes over the years, and they've probably tried to be, something that they've not. They tried to become, I think, a bakery at one point, and they kind of went back to actually what customers really love them for. But interestingly, they're very, very sharp on product development, and you're probably aware of the amazing coverage they got about probably 2 years ago now, when they launched their vegan sausage roll, and they sold millions of these things. Now, you'd never, if you said to somebody, just out of curiosity, where do you think you'd be able to buy a vegan sausage roll, right, prior to them launching this? I don't think too many people would have stuck their hands up and said, Greggs.
Yeah.
So they surprised people, but, they found that there was actually significant demand, because Greggs have lots of their branches in the City of London. So they're targeting a different customer in different places throughout the country, but there's definitely a love for the brand, and there's an underlying, again, it's kind of what I talk about in terms of, I think a lot of people who buy from Greggs don't probably see themselves as customers and are fans, and I think it's just that understanding of what different types of cohorts of customers are looking for, and making sure you localize the proposition, for them as much as you can based on where you are in the country. So going back to your homelands in Middlesbrough, the product proposition there might be quite different to what it looks like in the City of London, but that doesn't really matter, does it? It's as long as they're serving you well, they're delivering great service, and they've got a range of products that's relevant to customers in that local area, they'll be successful.
Yeah, it's interesting because we did something on the show actually in one of our consumer items about gift ideas, and one of the gift ideas we did was about Greggs like cards you can buy with money on, like a kind of voucher thing, a loyalty card. And honestly, it went loads of our viewers were wild for it, and I didn't even know they existed. But it is interesting how people's opinions can change about a brand and all the publicity around them as well. Thomas, can I just ask you on that idea of resurrection? And, we hear Martin talk about the resurrection of different brands, and digital is very much at the heart of that. So can you just explain about that, the kind of digital side of resurrection and how important that is?
Yeah. I think it's become more and more important. I would love to tell a little bit the story of Adobe and Adobe's digital transformation, because we are a dinosaur in the technology world. We were founded in 1982, so pre-internet, before Silicon Valley became what it is today, and we then grew quite quickly into the leading software maker of creative software. And pretty much all of you out there will know us for our Creative Cloud, which used to be called Creative Suite. And we used to press our software on a CD-ROM, shrink wrap it, and send it out to retailers who would then sell it to customers who we had very little contact with, to be fair. We didn't know what exactly they were doing. We were gathering feedback and insights, but it took 12 to 18 months to implement it when there was this next cycle and the next version of Creative Suite coming out and being released. And then in 2008, we decided to slowly change that. And then by 2011, we went to a digital subscription model, which says, we're not going to do that anymore. We want to be closer to our customers, and we're going to have our software as a service and software that you can only rent. Our stock price back then went down considerably. Everybody thought we were crazy. Also, given that you can imagine, customers all of a sudden were not spending thousands of dollars anymore on a CD-ROM, but they were paying, I don't know, 60, 70, 80 per month in renting it. So the cash flow took a big hit. What it enabled us, though, was to have a completely different relationship to our customers, of seeing and noticing pretty much every day and live how they were using our products, what they were struggling with, which ones were using it actively, and or which challenges they had, which parts of the product they never used, etc. So our whole marketing approach went from a let's make sure we are able to sell as many CD-ROMs as possible to a let's make sure we get as many satisfied and active customers of our products as possible, who would then retain their subscription and continue to grow with us. And we're lucky to say that ever since we've been on a roll, and we are now have just recently been nominated by Harvard Business Review as the #2 business transformation of the decade, just behind Netflix and in front of Amazon, as now the second biggest software company in the world, just after Microsoft. So digital transformation is something that we've kind of experienced over the past 10 years ourselves. And digital has been absolutely at the heart of that transformation of what we've gone through.
It's so interesting, isn't it, when you hear the stories of business and the kind of troughs and peaks of going through things. And just when you're going through a bad time, it doesn't necessarily mean you can't turn things around for the better. I love stories like that. We've got another question in for you. This is from Dave Lee. What businesses do you think have used technology in the best way to maximise their customer experience? Martin, what would you say to that?
Crikey. Well, I think lots of businesses are using technology well in terms of delivering what we call omni-channel. Again, not being a massive fan of the industry, some of the industry parlance, because customers don't see channels, they only see experiences. But I think it's about tying up, your stock, so you have a single view of your inventory, so you're able to make sure the product goes where the demand is, and you're enabled to give customers the experience they want, whether that's offline, online, researching online, buying offline, clicking, collecting, or whatever it happens to be. So I think a lot of brands today can do, to be honest with you, can do quite a lot of that. I tend to think beyond just the tech in itself. I look at brands like AO.com, who used to be known as Appliances Online, a stock market listed business. You get your white goods from, your fridge freezers, but you also get TVs and all sorts of electrical equipment from now. And I want to talk about them briefly because they're a very customer-centric business from one end to the other, really, and from top to bottom. John Roberts, the founder of the business, spends time every day signing the letters that go back to customers when they've had an issue or when they're complimenting them. The people who do the logistics, who actually, install the fridge freezers, they're not being incentivized by how many did they install in a day. They're only being incentivized by customer satisfaction. And when they bring people into the business, they're looking to hire people who have cultural attributes such as, ambitious, but also they're humble, because humility brings the right type of behavior when it comes to dealing with things, when, collaborating with their colleagues or dealing with customers when things go wrong, So it's not specifically just about the tech, albeit they built their business around great web technology and marketing solutions, but essentially front to back, top to bottom, again, a very customer-centric organization.
Yeah. I want to ask you another question as well, just about in terms of, Martin, the knowing businesses knowing what they stand for and then communicating that to customers.
Sure.
So what do you think is the best way to communicate to that? Because that is key, isn't it? Is knowing what you stand for.
I think it's massive. And I think that, I do a lot of high street videos, right? I do mystery shopping all over the world, New York, Sydney, Melbourne, Hong Kong, Glasgow, London, Newcastle, you name it, Colchester. I've been to the great and the good. And what happened when I ask customers on the high street, what do you like and what don't you like about offline shopping? They always tell me that, number one, there's not enough staff to serve them when they go into the stores. Why is that, I wonder? Well, that's because brands are looking at the cost to serve customers instead of looking at customers as a profit center. So they reduce the headcount in the stores, and it has a negative impact on experience and sales because people walk out. The other is that it's an homogenous experience. So I think anything that you can do to prove to consumers that you're an authentic brand and that you stand for something is really going to make you stand out. And, the one brand that always comes to mind for me is Patagonia in the outdoor sector. Again, North American brand, but of course you can buy from Patagonia all over the world. They have a big European business here. And if you go onto the homepage of the Patagonia website, instead of them always pushing outdoor products, it's summer, festival time, hopefully, tents, wearing boots and all the rest of it. They're talking about the Gochin, who are the indigenous population in Alaska, whose whole future has been threatened by the oil and gas companies who have been given a license by the previous American government, recently paused by the current American government, to go in and drill for oil and gas, and the impact that it was having on their environment. So this is a cause-driven business. But what you find with any business that is truly customer-centric, and in the case of them, where they have a real meaningful purpose, people really treat them, as I say, people are fans of Patagonia. They don't see themselves as customers. They're much more invested in the brand. They're much more invested in what Patagonia believes in because they believe in similar stuff. And guess what? When businesses do this and do it well, they are also highly commercially successful, and not only in the short term, but over a sustained period of time.
Yeah. And can I ask then about the role of social media in communicating what people stand for, or just generally social media and the importance of that for engagement with customers? Because you can see some companies, can't you, like really get it right and be brilliant and everyone's sharing their tweets and the like. And then you see others just totally get it wrong and alienate their customers. So how do they get it right?
Well, I mean, you've got to think of social media, first of all. I'm going to give you a great example of my local barbers, but initially I'm just going to talk about this sort of strategy, if you like, behind social media, because social media is an environment where you can potentially now sell to customers. So we call it social commerce. So more and more brands are selling on Instagram or selling on Facebook direct to consumers, not necessarily just through their own website. You serve customers on there. So increasingly when customers have a customer service issue, they expect to go onto Twitter or go onto Facebook in order to have it resolved. So it's something that you have to take really seriously. And I still think too many businesses give it to the youngest person in the room because they know all about TikTok, or they know all about the latest social media fad. It's much more strategic than that and too important to the point you were making about when it goes wrong. I got a haircut in a barber's in North London in Cockfosters called Ego Barbers. I should say what hair I have left, which seems to be diminishing by the day at the moment. Anyway, that's my own problem to deal with. This barbershop, I love them. They're 4 Greek Cypriot barbers, just 4 of them, one barbershop. Go on Instagram and have a look at them. They have 240,000 followers on Instagram. Wow. And I know household name brands that have a fraction of that level of following and engagement. And it's just that they're authentic. You know, first of all, my haircut aside, they do cut good hair. I'm going there on Saturday. They do cut good hair. They post it on Instagram. They happen to be fortunate enough to have quite a lot of footballers in North London get their haircut in there as well, but that probably helps. But they also take a lot of videos of themselves, like just day in, day out, having a laugh with customers, fooling around, having a laugh with themselves and posting it on Instagram. So that they're hugely authentic and genuine. And it really resonates to the point now where they go around the world, or they were prior to the pandemic and will be again when things open up. They go around the world delivering training. They come out on stage in Brazil or in the States or in Asia in front of thousands of fans who have never had their haircut by them, but I've seen them and I've seen their content being posted and shared on Instagram. It's incredible. They've created a global brand from one barbershop in Cockfosters, and now they're going to create, you know, a whole bunch of hair products, you know, off the back of that. Hopefully something that can help my hair grow back in due course.
You look great. Don't know why you're worrying. It's funny you mentioned that, actually, Martin, because yesterday we did something on the show about book talk. So this is where people go on TikTok and they review books. They talk about their books that they like, and it's suddenly massively increased the sales of lots of books that perhaps would never have even been, you know, picked up in the past. And I interviewed this author who'd done, it was her debut novel, and it was a crime thriller. And what she'd done is she got her husband to just do a book talk or a TikTok, whatever you want to call it. And they did the premise of the book just as him being a character in it. And it went from her selling maybe 30,000 copies to suddenly flying into the New York Times bestseller list, and was up there with Barack Obama's book, all based on this daft video, like 20-second video she'd done, and she had no idea. So it's really interesting, isn't it? This idea of you can be small, but in terms of your, you know, a local barber business or whatever, but be huge globally if you just use technology in the right way, Thomas. It comes back again to how you use it, comes back to staying authentic, as Martin said, and all of that can make such a huge difference. And I think businesses can sometimes forget that, can't they, Thomas? Do you think?
It can, yes. And I think it's a two-way street, right? Social media is so important as a listening tool, and as a way to really, you know what's going on with my target audience and with my customers. It's also a way, as Martin said, to do commerce over it, or more importantly, to engage, to give feedback, to give support, and the best brands are doing that in a good way. I think the tricky bit, and the thing that we're discussing with customers these days, is again how do I avoid that a social media channel becomes a silo, and connecting the dots, because customers expect that my interaction over that social media channel is going to be taken into account, in best case, when I call them up in the call center the next day, and or when I'm on the website and then afterwards. And so, for example, we're having lots of discussions with entertainment brands who have millions of followers on social media, but who have relatively little access to actually the data and the types of customers that are on there. And when they then go, so think a Formula One team, think a Premier League club, right? The experience that you get as a fan on a social media versus their own website, versus the premium content offer that they have, versus the merchandising shop, often is not stitched up. And so the question is, how do I balance also the shoulder clapping? I've got now the 10th million follower on Facebook. That is fantastic and great. But how do I then monetize that? Not even in financial terms, but in ways of then only having that as a starting point for an engagement with your customer that leads across channels, because that customer does not only want to engage with you on that social media channel, but also on all these others. And especially if I then think about, hey, I want to get them in, I want to produce my own content, and I want to make that attractive to a customer. But how do I stitch that data together? That's the thing that a lot of brands are working on at the moment.
Yeah, it's like the conversion in all of this. I want to ask you about how Generation Z fit into all of this, because Peter Thorne has asked a question. Thank you very much for the questions coming in. Again, if you do want to join, they're on the right-hand side of the screen in the chat function there. You can send them through to us. So yeah, does the influence of Gen Z make tech more important? Martin, what are your thoughts on that?
Does the influence of Gen Z make tech more important? Again, I don't think it's about the tech. I think it's about how do you empower Gen Z to have the experiences that they're looking for. And I think if you understand them and their view of the world. I live with two of them. I have a 20-year-old daughter. I have a 25-year-old daughter. The 25-year-old is on the cusp of millennial and Gen Z. She's probably year one Gen Z. My youngest daughter is a Greta Thunberg archetype. You know, she is an activist. I get reverse mentored every evening around the dinner table when she's back from university about, you know, how I should be thinking about the world. I mean it quite seriously, how I should be thinking about the planet. I wrote a whole chapter in my book about diversity. Who did I go to for my lessons learned on that? I spoke to my youngest daughter to start the conversation. I really did. I soaked up as much insight as I could from her, because this is the way Gen Zs think. So I think if you understand their behavior, then you can work out what you need to do with the tech. So for example, you know, in the payments industry, you'll have heard of, you know, buy now, pay later, you know, and this has become very prevalent for this younger customer base, because they don't like having, you know, I'm in my mid-50s, as you can probably tell. I'm quite happy to have a bunch of credit cards and other cards in my bank cards in my wallet. Gen Z are not interested in that. They don't want credit cards. They either want to pay cash, they want to pay debit card, or they want to use their debit card, or they want to buy now, pay later, because it gives them the flexibility that they're looking for. So it's understanding, you know, these trends and what matters to these to different segments of customers. Then you can find the right solution that's going to empower them to have the experience that they're looking for. And you talked about social. I mean, it's even understanding where they live in social media. I mean, my kids, I have to say to my kids, you know, my daughter Antonia's birthday just over a week ago, I did a post on Facebook, because I spend most of my time on Facebook outside of LinkedIn. I don't spend that much time on TikTok, to be honest, although having heard that story about the book sales there, I think I'm going to get myself on there very quickly. I'm going to work out a routine with my wife, and you'll see me on there tomorrow. But, you know, it's about understanding where are the channels that you know, Gen Z are going to want to interact with you. And they are on TikTok, and they are on Instagram, and largely they're not on Facebook. And I have to say to my daughter, you know, I've had over 150 likes of my birthday post for you. You need to go on there and thank people, you know, because they've taken the time to wish you a happy birthday. She thought I was mad, but I thought that was the right thing to do, right? Just to be nice to people. But that's not where you find my daughters. You don't find them there anymore. So it's understanding that behavior, you know.
That's the equivalent of your mum and dad asking you to write a letter to everyone who sent you a birthday card, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah, but I think that comes back to this point about we're not one homogenous lump, are we? Everyone's different. And I guess as a business, you have to be agile, and you have to think about how you can cater to your different customers and the different spaces that they're in. And again, Thomas, I mean, what are your thoughts on this? Because that can really influence how a business works.
It does. And I think it comes back to, that is part of the personalization, right? So if a Gen Z audience wants to interact and engage with me on this particular channel and touch point, I'd be mad to say, no, you know, I'm not open to that. And I am just going to be, you know, I'm a Facebook brand or something like that, right? So I think it is very much around catering to the preferences and catering to the to those touch points and the preferences, how customers do want to interact with me. And the orchestration of that experience across those preferences and across a customer journey that is, as we all know, increasingly less linear and more kind of, in and out and circular, to orchestrate that and to optimize that becomes increasingly complex, right? Someone said, even if you have 5 different customer segments and you want to personalize maybe just, 3 elements of your website to each of those, you soon get into the thousands of different combinations. You need content for this. You need a different message. You might need a different photo, etc. To orchestrate all of that becomes increasingly difficult. I think that's where technology comes in. Technology, in my mind, has to simplify the job and the role of the employees who are orchestrating and optimizing this experience. And it's the reason why we as Adobe are trying to provide those tools that are simplifying the job of a marketeer and or increasingly of other roles in an organization that are responsible for providing that customer experience, catering to the individual differences, whether they be Gen Z or baby boomers.
Yeah. I want to come back to, Martin, something you said around the customer experience being a profit centre rather than a cost one. So can you explain a bit about how you implement that? Because there are lots of businesses who think, oh, God, customer experience is just going to cost a fortune and we won't see many returns for it.
Yeah. And that becomes, unfortunately, you're absolutely right, and that becomes a race to the bottom. So I can assure you that today, whatever the percentage is, it's in the fairly significant 90-odd percentile of businesses who focus on the cost to serve. And I've had I want to give you a direct experience I've had of this and what the implications of that can be. So I had the privilege about 3 or 4 years ago, I was on the advisory board of a brand called Wiggle. So if you're into cycling, you might have bought your bike or your cycling gear, your Lycra from Wiggle, your water bottles, so on and so forth. And the then CEO, who's a very smart guy, who had built the business from 35 million to 140 million, something I've never done, by the way, very smart guy, was doing a presentation with his marketing director to this small advisory board. And he said, we've got nearly 800,000 lapsed customers. I thought, crikey, that's a lot of lapsed customers. Why? What's the driver for that? At the same time, a friend of mine who had found out I'd just become involved on the advisory board said, I need to send you this email. Because he was mad into cycling. He was going into competition. Wiggle had sent him the wrong part for his bike. He was getting stressed. It's a few days away from the event. He's emailed backwards and forwards and said, look, can you just pick up the phone, please, and call me to arrange a convenient time to send this part because I need it for Sunday. And the email that came back said, dear Mr. Hamilton, I'm really sorry, but at the moment, we don't call customers. We only talk to them through email and live chat. And I was horrified. But I knew in one moment what that was all about. This was a business that was an internet business that thought it could behave differently from a traditional retail business and that it didn't need the human interaction. So I said to the CEO, I said, look, have we not looked at putting in a contact center? He said, are you mad? Do you know how many emails we get every single day? It would cost us a fortune. I said, so you've looked at the cost, but you haven't looked at the benefit. And there you go, you've got 800,000 lapsed customers. Now, I'm not trying to suggest that all those customers had lapsed because of that particular issue, but there's no question that was a driver. So it's thinking about customer lifetime value. It's thinking about how do I turn Stephanie, how do I turn Thomas from being customers into being fans and working back from that? And then at least if you try, not everybody's going to be able to turn a customer into a fan, but at least if you make that effort, you know that you're going to receive a better level of service. You know that your staff are going to prefer working in a business like yours because you're going to have a great culture. You're going to be authentic. You're probably going to have a purpose. You're going to communicate more effectively, and so on and so forth. It's a kind of virtuous circle, basically. Yeah, and those businesses that do that are commercially successful year after year after year.
Thomas, is there anything you wanted to add to that? I just saw you jump up from your chairs if you had something really important to say.
And I think what I want to add is that it's been proven that over a longer term, investing in customer experience management pays off. Martin is citing a study of Newman, PwC, I think, that looked at the return on shareholder investment of customer experience leaders and that being a lot higher. I mentioned before a Forrester study that looked at 1,000 different organizations, looked at them and said 30% are customer experience leaders, 70% are not. What is the difference between those two? And I think Martin is absolutely right that it does pay off because having the customer experience, the right customer experience, will lead to retention, will lead to customer lifetime value. I think the difficulty is, and again, something that we discuss with customers, is that you have to be quite brave to, especially in a Wall Street dominated world, to say, this is not going to pay off in month one, maybe not even in year one, the same as our CEO and board did 10 years ago to say, we're going to be a digitally led business. We're going to stop making these CD-ROMs, and we are going to have a digital ongoing 24/7 relationship with our customers. And this is what's going to happen to our KPIs. This is what's going to happen with the indicators that we should really be focusing on, because if you just look at our cash flow over the next few months and years, it is not the whole story. And I think equipping senior executives of telling that story to their shareholders, of convincing the organization that it's worth investing in it, coming up with business cases to really go through, hey, if we do this, i.e. implement a customer service center or call center, here is the behavior, here are the things that we would like to see, i.e. A certain customer lifetime value of a cohort of customers, or a certain behavior at the end of a warranty period or something like that. And let's use that as a path for us to go forward. I think that's something that is important. That's not easy to do, especially in large, complex organizations. But it's ultimately, I think, the choice that is unrivaled and doesn't have an alternative.
Yeah.
Can I just talk to that for two? Sorry, Steph, I just wanted to talk to that very briefly, if you don't mind, for 2 seconds. Totally agree with Thomas. I mean, but I think what I was just going to add to what Thomas said is, and I don't want to be too controversial here, but most of the people running our businesses, are incentivized by what happens in that calendar year. They're not incentivized. This is what Thomas was alluding to. They're not incentivized by what happens in 3 years' time or 5 years' time. They might have a long-term incentive plan. They call it an LTIP. But most of the, my bonus, rests on what happens in the next 12 months. So they've got to be given the freedom. They've got to be remunerated in a different way. They've got to be given the opportunity to step outside of that, to make those types of longer-term decisions in terms of the payback. But the other thing I was just going to add is, I'm a firm believer of failing fast. I don't like to fail at anything, but you need to have a culture that encourages people to try things, and you cannot always be 100% sure. So yes, you can try and create a business case, but you'll never be 100% clear that it's going to work. And if you look at the disruptive brands, I mean, when Uber or whoever, Airbnb or Monzo Bank first came up with this new banking model, they said, this is what we're going to do for customers. They're not going to have to wait a month to transfer their bank account. They're going to be able to open up with us in 2 minutes, and they're going to be able to get insight into what other people like them are doing with their money, and they're going to have a whole new experience. You can imagine investors going, whoops, that's a bit weird. Never heard of anything like this before. But that's the type of mindset you need to be able to encourage people to try things and empower them to do it. And if it doesn't work, you learn and you move on.
And last comment on this, I think that's where purpose comes in also, right? That's where purpose helps to give a North Star of going in a direction, even though you might not have the 100% certainty whether the business case is going to go up. But as long as you're following that North Star, I think something that Amazon has been fantastic over the past 20 years of, is this making our customer experience simpler and better? And if so, let's do that and worry about the profitability afterwards.
Yep.
Yeah, it comes back as well to what you were saying, Martin, because a lot of the businesses that I see, you know, through my job, I've visited hundreds and hundreds of different companies around the country. And, you know, the thing you see, the ones where they're good, it's the ones who encourage all employees to be part of that creative process as well and to be part of that innovation. It's not siloed to just being, you know, the industrial designers of a team or whatever else. It's like, if you've got ideas, bring them to the table, and they're often, and it comes back to that employee culture you were talking about. I've got some more questions for you. I'm just going to throw you all way. So this one's from Ali Gerard, who says, how can large organisations create hyper-localised experiences for their customers?
Love that question. Love that question.
Yeah, go on, Martin.
Because I honestly believe that, you know, again, if you remember what I was saying maybe about 10 minutes ago or 15 minutes ago, I was talking about my high street videos and asking consumers what they don't like about the in-store experience. And they would always say it's homogenous. You know, you go from one national chain to another national chain, and it just kind of feels the same. It's not exciting. It's not invigorating. The product's often quite similar. The staff are not particularly engaging, yada, 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 right? So what I would say is start to think and behave like an independent retailer. What happened is when our national retail chains started to grow and add on more stores and more stores and more stores, there was this whole premise of economies of scale. We've got a head office. The head office will dictate what happens in all of those stores. We'll dictate what they sell. We'll run all the marketing communication. We'll do all the customer service from our contact center or whatever it happens to be. And the poor people that are working in the store on the front line, who are the ones that can actually have the biggest single impact on whether somebody buys something or not, are not empowered. They're not given the opportunity to say, do you know something? See those jackets that you sent us? I'm not sure they're quite right for the south coast of England. I think they'll go down very well in Glasgow, particularly the waterproof ones. Maybe you could send me some swimsuits here in Torquay, because we could do with a bit more of that, you know, and allowing them to communicate more locally. And it's really thinking and behaving like an independent retailer, giving them, it's almost like treating a store manager like a managing director, and giving them much more authority and responsibility for what happens in their store. You know, at the moment, national retailers, you know, people send down the store. This is what the store needs to look like. You need to put these products here. You need to put that promotional message there. And the reality is that customers are different. And one of the great examples I sometimes refer to is Walgreens, Boots Walgreens, but Walgreens specifically. Have you been to San Francisco?
I have, yeah. It's gorgeous.
I love San Francisco. One of my favorite places in the whole world. And you go to San Francisco, and I promise you, you can go into half a dozen Walgreens, and the experience will be different in every single one. Next time you're there, there's one just off Fisherman's Wharf. Go in there, and you'll see in the window before you walk in the store, they're selling buckets and spades and tourist-related products, because they're in the tourist area. Whereas if you go downtown San Francisco, again, it's completely different. They've got high-end delicatessens catering to the business people who are working in downtown San Francisco. I don't know how they do it, because they're a massive business. But they found a way of localizing, you know, the product proposition, which is one part of it. But empower the people that are running the stores to personalize it and make it more relevant to the needs of customers in the local areas. That's the way I would go. And don't be scared to do it. You know, there's almost this, give somebody a local Facebook page. Hey, imagine what they might write. You know, give it a try. It doesn't work, move on, right? Fail fast.
Yeah, and also that comes back to the point about that empowers people as well. If they know as the store manager that they are in control, they're not just, you know, in the food chain, they're actually creating stuff themselves. That's what got to empower them too.
It's not only empowerment. I mean, think about the job satisfaction that people get when they're on the front line, and they're treated with the respect. They're given the empowerment. Again, a very quick example: Home Depot in the States, in North America, in the DIY space, they empower their staff in the stores to basically give a $50 discount to customers. Why? To get a sale, right? I just done mystery shopping of all the DIY retailers in the south of London. And I can tell you, I went in trying to buy a Ring doorbell or one of those similar products, Chime Ring, etc., with the video camera and everything. And I'm not kidding. Not a single employee in a single store tried to sell me anything. And it's not because of COVID. It's because they're not being focused on that. They're not being trained. They're not being developed. They're not being incentivized. I mean, why are people in the stores in the first place? They're not there just to stack shelves. They're there to serve customers, and they're there to sell. And it's just such a missed opportunity, you know?
Yeah. Thomas, what are your thoughts on all this?
My thoughts are that ultimately to hyper-localize the experience and empowering employees, you can't run away from data, right? They need data. And sometimes they have the data in terms of having a person in front of them. Sometimes it's a little bit more hidden, quote unquote, in what's going on and trends that are going on in their customers. And I think that's where that term data democratization comes in, right? Don't hide your data in a center of excellence with a dozen analysts that are trying to come up with all of the answers. Make that data available to those individuals that are at the heart of determining, creating, designing that customer experience, down to the person where I know some retailers who give access to some dashboards, etc., to people in the store and staff in the store, because they often have the better hypothesis and the better ideas to actually say, hey, what's going on here? And so a big one also, our founder, a person called Chuck Geschke, who just unfortunately died a couple months ago, his big mantra was, the best ideas come from everywhere within the organization. And I think that's so important to leverage the power of data across the organization and make those dashboards available and the insights available, not just to a handful of people, but rather to enable maybe the person in the store or others. We have examples of retail banks where thousands of people have access to data and are able to change the experience on the website because they saw, hey, that table there is so confusing. I've had people calling me in the call center about this so many times. Let's look at whether that is just an unfortunate trend that I've come across here, or whether that's actually something that is true. And then having the ability through technology to actually change it, and not having to write a ticket that then takes 6 months to actually change on the website. That's, I think, something that more and more organizations are going for and are implementing it. Last comment on this, it needs, again, to trust your employees. You make yourself vulnerable by opening up and by having this data democratization. So again, it's about an employee experience that is not hiding stuff away, but that is putting accountability, responsibility, but also the tools in the hands of those that are ultimately responsible for creating that customer experience management, which I think then creates this virtuous cycle.
Yeah, we haven't got long left, but I just want to throw another question at you, because this is a really good point. In terms of all of these ideas and principles we've discussed, there's a question here from S. Lawson who says, does all this apply to B2B too? Martin.
100%. One of the I remember many years ago, as a usability expert, I won't go into all the details of what that means for another conversation, but I'm sure most people will probably know. I was looking at a business-to-business website. They were in the sort of health and protection environment, let's just say. And going onto the website, it was like shopping in a bank. I'd never seen so many barriers put in the way of being able to buy something. And that's because they were a business selling to other businesses that somehow thought the experience had to be different. When I said to them, actually, all the people that buy from you, all the people who are procuring the products that you sell for health and safety in their business, they're all consumers, and they spend a lot more time on consumer websites than they do on business-to-business websites. So you need to give them a retail experience. Yes, you can have all the relevant content and the terms and conditions and whatever else that relate to your sector, but you need to give them a journey that they're familiar with. So I think that, of course, there are nuances, but, at the end of the day, being focused on customers is being focused on customers. And of course, the value of business customers in many segments, as Thomas will know better than I do, is massively greater than it is when you're selling to a bunch of consumers. You could be talking about, many tens of millions of pounds potentially when you're buying big technology solutions. Of course, not always at that level. But yeah, the same. My sentiment is it doesn't matter whether it's B2B or whether it's business to consumer. Start with the customer. Treat customers as a profit center. Think about lifetime value. How far might you be able to take that? How do you turn customers into fans and work back from that, and then determine the type of experience that's going to be relevant for them?
Yeah, and just briefly, we've just got a couple of minutes left. I just want to ask a final question as well. This is from May Cohen, who asks, how can we ensure our diversity and inclusion programme isn't just a tick box exercise? Thomas, do you want to pick this up in terms of Adobe's thoughts on this? How do you make sure it isn't a tick box exercise?
I think ultimately it's how are you authentic? How are you walking the talk? How are you following up words with actions? And how do you do this not just at a time when everyone else is doing it, but rather in a continuous way? So we've been trying to do that by a number of things, right? It all comes down to awareness, that we have those unconscious biases, that we have those gaps that we need to focus on. It comes down to inspiration and something that we call Adobe for All, where employees as well as others tell their story, the story of hardship, story of journeys that they've been on. And I think ultimately then it comes down to a program and very tangible steps that go down to hiring practices, that come down to the importance and the place that this topic is being given in employee events, in customer communication, etc. But also very much in KPIs along the lines of, where are we on gender pay? Where are we on diversity and inclusion in our engineering staff, in our commercial staff? So it's something that's I think very close to our heart, and something that is difficult to get right. And I think it's something where indeed actions talk louder than words.
Yeah, I think that's a good summary of it. Just to wrap things up then, Martin, you have got about 45 seconds to tell me what is the take-home you want everyone watching to take away from this and from the thoughts and ideas in your book.
Sure. Well, I believe I've written a book that can transform your business. We've seen, unfortunately, far too many businesses go bust over the last 5 or 10 years. And honestly, I can point to almost on every single occasion a lack of customer centricity being the determining factor in their demise, whether that's because they were selling the wrong product to the wrong people, communicating in the wrong way, not investing in their staff, not empowering their staff, not empowering their customers, not being diverse, not having a purpose, and so on. And I've created in the book a framework that I believe can help any organization, whether you're selling to other businesses or you're selling to consumers, to go on this journey fairly quickly, actually, not as long as you think, fairly quickly. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit to get after and put in place the building blocks that are going to guarantee the future success of your business. And if you don't do that, then it's not my fault, because I think I've written something that will provide you with the tools to do it. I wish you the best of luck. Thank you to everyone that's joined, but I'll let you do the wrap-up.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks very much to Martin Newman there and Thomas Meyer. Thanks so much for joining us for this as well, and thank you for all the questions you've sent in. It's been great to go through them. I'm going to hand you back to Lee now, so goodbye from us here in Leeds and across the country as well. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Steph, and thank you, Martin and Thomas. Also, thank you too to our readers. We've been thrilled to be joined by so many of you this afternoon. I feel that an event like today proves how we can be inspired by great ideas, great conversation and great books. And we hope you're able to take away from today's session practical ideas that you can implement in your business. The inspiration doesn't end here though. Over the coming days, there'll be more exclusive content available on our website, which will further explore the power of customer experience. Thank you again for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.